Well, it's certainly an honour and a pleasure to be launching Deb Waterhouse-Watson's book, Athletes, Sexual Assault and Trials by Media, Narrative Immunity, there in all its blue glory. I'm very lucky to have gotten to know Deb over the past few years through her work and a shared interest in feminist and gender analysis of popular media and in particular sport, and to get to know her personally. And so it is, as I said, a great honour to be here to launch this book. And it's really wonderful to see so many of you here to celebrate what really is an important occasion tonight. As Brent said, it's, you know, you only get one first book, and I think this is important for a number of reasons. Personally, for Deb, I think it's a real validation of years of dedication and detailed research, which has culminated in this publication. So it is great to have that kind of validation, I think, to see all your work in print and being acknowledged by colleagues, peers, friends and family. And I'm sure that many of you here know Deb's reputation and her profile as one of the key intellectual voices in Australia on the topic of sexual assault by sportsmen, and particularly in terms of how this is reported and represented in the media. She's written extensively on this topical subject, and her works appeared in scholarly journals. I've had the pleasure of seeing her present her research in seminar fora, and also to provide expert commentary in wider public debate around these issues. So it's really wonderful to see her ideas and her perspective on this really topical issue come together in book form, and I think it really deserves this kind of sustained and detailed kind of, it needs the time and space, I think, to see all of these ideas come together in book form, and that's why I think it's really important for her to have this research published, and very necessary. So it is important in another sense, and I think that's for contributing a really unique perspective on the issue of violence against women more generally. So both in an Australia and international contexts, abuses against women have received, I think interestingly in the past year or so, a real renewed kind of attention, and very much a necessary attention as a key site for ongoing gender inequality. So some of you might be aware that the key theme of International Women's Day this year was ending violence against women. We see the abduction and containment of women in the US, the recent case, as well as rapes against women in India. So I think there's in the sort of global media sphere, there's this really renewed attention around questions of violence and injustice against women. And I think in some respect, even though this is a book about sport, it is more broadly about these kinds of gender injustices. So in her research, Deb really does look to sport in particular as one of these sites of gender inequality. And in particular, she looks at the major male-dominated sporting codes in Australia. So the AFL, the Australian Football League, and the NRL, the National Rugby League, to try to make sense of some of the sustained and frequent allegations of sexual assault that are made by women against footballers. So I'm sure that many of you would be familiar with the kinds of allegations that have been circulating over the past 10 years, and if not, Deb offers a very comprehensive list at the back of the book. So again, very thorough and comprehensive survey of the kinds of incidents and events which have come to light within the popular media, but I think more broadly in the cultural psyche too. And to quote Deb's own words, if you'd allow me, she says footballers' off-field behaviour and that of young women associated with footballers of all codes has been a hot topic internationally for several decades. Disproportionate numbers of elite male athletes at high school, university and professional levels have been accused of sexual assault as compared with men in the wider community? Is there a culture of disrespect in football? Why all the group sex? Is there anything wrong with that? Why are the athletes so rarely convicted? So these are the kinds of questions, I think, that are circulating within the broader popular discourse. But they're also questions that Deb seeks to respond to. And in doing so, she really does pay close attention to the intense media debate around such incidents. And in doing so, she offers what I think is the first real comprehensive and wide-ranging analysis of how these events are reported in the media. And when I say the media, I'm talking here of the news media, both print and television, not just confined to sporting news, but within general news, looking at sports books, as well as looking at the way in which policy around respect towards women by both codes frames these kinds of incidents. Specifically, she looks at the critical role language plays in creating particular stories and stereotypes of the men and women involved that the wider public come to take as given or come to see as natural. So Deb speaks of the construction of the women in these incidents as gold diggers, as predators, as party girls, who are largely complicit in their victimisation, and is very critical of this kind of broader cultural perception. So too does she identify male footballers as exonerated from blame, and this is the narrative of unity in the title that she's referring to. Such trials by media, Deb deftly argues, absolves footballers from being held accountable for their actions. I found this to be a really thoughtful book in that it deals with a really highly charged issue that's emotional for many people, not just those that are implicated or involved, but I think, for fans, for the wider community that feel some sense of investment or ownership around sport, whether it's a particular club or team, or whether it's a particular code that might be representative of our nation and our culture. These kinds of incidents, I think, engage us all in some way, whether it's in terms of our communities, our own identities, affiliations with others. And despite its academic pedigree, this is certainly not an impenetrable book. I found it to be very compellingly written, and I think as a scholar of literature, Deb does have that on her side. And, for me it possesses the hallmark of the best kind of academic writing, in that it makes you see an issue that you thought you understood thoroughly or that you thought had been spoken about ad infinitum and you knew everything about it, but it actually makes you see it in a new way. And so in conclusion, I'd like to encourage you to buy this book for yourselves, for others that you know, for your libraries, and to put your hands together and extend congratulations to Deb on this wonderful achievement.